There is a world hidden just beyond the reach of our five senses. It moves silently beside us, shaping destinies, whispering through dreams, and standing as witness to every human action. In this unseen world, the ancestors walk among the living, and the gods do not merely sit in the heavens, they live, breathe, and sometimes even rule. In many African cultures, the spiritual world is not some distant abstraction. It is intimate, immediate, and alive, flowing into every corner of daily life. Imagine a realm where the dead do not depart, but remain guardians of the family line, offering protection, guidance, and wisdom from across the veil. Imagine a society where kings are more than rulers. They are sacred vessels, embodying the spirit of the divine. In such a world, life is never just physical. Every river, every mountain, every whisper of wind is charged with spiritual meaning. Every birth, every death, every decision ripples through a larger cosmic order, watched over by forces both ancient and profound. Across the vast and varied landscapes of Africa, this understanding of reality persists. It persists in the quiet prayers whispered to ancestors before dawn. It persists in the sacred drumming that summons unseen powers. It persists in the shrines tucked away in forests and the stories passed down through generations. Here, the line between human and spirit, between living and God, is not hard and fast. It is a bridge constantly crossed, constantly honored. Yet much of this world remains hidden to the outside eye. Its rhythms, its ceremonies, and its codes have often been misunderstood, simplified, or forgotten. But to those who live within its embrace, this sacred world is as real and as necessary as breath itself. It is here that we discover the living gods human beings set apart, anointed by sacred tradition to carry divine authority into human affairs. It is here that we meet the ancestors, not as distant memories, but as present forces of moral guidance and protection. Today, we embark on a journey into this hidden world. We will explore the roles of the ancestors, the mysteries of the living gods, and the sacred technologies that bridge the seen and unseen realms. This is not merely history. It is a living reality, a reminder that the greatest powers are not always visible, and the oldest truths are not always spoken aloud. Welcome to the secrets of Africa's hidden spiritual world, where every step you take is already remembered by those who came before you.
In African thought, death is not a disappearance, it is a return. The end of physical life does not sever the soul from the living, but instead elevates it into a new role, that of the ancestor. Ancestors are not distant phantoms, nor are they worshipped as deities. They are remembered as elders who have crossed into the spirit world yet remain active in the affairs of the family, clan, and community. Their presence is not a myth, it is a felt reality. To many African cultures, the ancestors are the moral compass and spiritual backbone of society. They are honored not just out of tradition but out of recognition that their lives, their choices, and their sacrifices continue to shape the living. Their guidance is sought during moments of crisis, celebration, transition, and silence. They are protectors who watch from the invisible world, ensuring that those they love remain on the right path. But their protection is not unconditional. It flows in alignment with moral integrity, family unity, and respect for sacred order. Rituals that honor ancestors vary across the continent, but they share a unifying principle. Remembrance is a sacred act. Whether through pouring libations to invite their presence, sharing their names in stories, or setting aside a portion of a meal in their honor, these acts are not mere symbols. They are moments of reconnection, spiritual gestures that maintain the thread between the generations. In some communities, ancestral shrines serve as spaces for reflection and prayer. In others, songs and proverbs carry the wisdom of those who have transitioned. The ancestral realm is not a place of shadow or fear. It is a domain of responsibility, memory, and moral clarity. Those who lived well, with kindness, truth, and devotion to their people, are remembered with reverence. Their spirits are said to walk alongside the living, guiding decisions, guarding children, and preserving the lineage. But those who broke sacred laws or harmed the community are remembered differently, sometimes with caution, sometimes with distance. In this way, the ancestral realm becomes both a mirror and a map, a reflection of the past and a guide toward the future. What makes African ancestral consciousness unique is its refusal to isolate the past. It recognizes that we are not self-made, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before, and their eyes are still watching, not with judgment, but with the wisdom of those who understand time far better than we do. In honoring them, the living do not dwell in nostalgia. They walk forward with strength, knowing they are never alone. Across many African cultures, there exists a sacred idea that the divine does not only reside in the heavens, it can be present among us, within us, and sometimes through us. This is the concept of the living God, a person set apart not by personal ambition, but by lineage, spiritual authority, or ancestral covenant. These figures are not worshipped as the supreme creator, but honored as vessels who carry divine presence, wisdom, or power into the human realm. In many societies, kings, queens, or spiritual leaders are seen not merely as political figures, but as sacred individuals whose authority flows from the spiritual world. An Abba, for instance, is not just a monarch. He is believed to embody the spirit of the community and the continuity of its ancestors. Similarly, in other regions, kings are revered as intermediaries between the seen and the unseen, guardians of tradition and harmony, responsible not just for governance, but for spiritual balance. These individuals are often born into specific lineages or chosen through ancestral signs, divination, or sacred rites. Their words carry weight not simply because of status, but because they are believed to speak in alignment with spiritual law. The ceremonies surrounding their leadership, the coronations, blessings, and rituals are designed not just to install a leader, but to consecrate a bridge between heaven and earth. It is important to understand that these living gods are not seen as infallible or all-powerful. They are respected, even revered, but always within the context of divine accountability. Their power is sacred only as long as it is used to serve, protect, and uphold the values of the people. Should they stray from this path, traditions often include rituals of correction, removal, or spiritual cleansing. This reinforces the idea that divine presence is not something to be possessed. It is something to be carried with humility. What's truly fascinating is how this concept echoes ideas found across the world, from the divine kingship of ancient Egypt to the anointed leaders in biblical tradition. In each case, there is a nonsense that the human body can be a vessel for something greater, that leadership can be more than administrative, it can be sacred. In African traditions, the living God reminds the people that the divine is not far away. It walks among them, speaks through them, and holds them together in times of uncertainty. The living God is not the final destination of worship, but a signpost pointing the community toward the deeper, unseen forces that govern life. In African spiritual thought, the world is more than what we can see or touch. Reality is layered, and the most important truths often lie just beyond the surface. To maintain harmony between the physical and the spiritual, communities developed sacred ways of communicating with the invisible realm, not as superstition, but as tradition rooted in experience, reverence, and generations of spiritual observation. Communication with ancestors and divine forces is not casual or spontaneous. It requires preparation, discipline, and respect. These interactions are guided by elders, spiritual leaders, and designated guardians of wisdom who serve as mediators between the worlds. The purpose is not manipulation, but connection, to seek guidance, protection, or clarity in times of decision, illness, or transition. Among the Yoruba, for example, the Ifa divination system is used to consult the wisdom of the Orunmila, the deity of wisdom and knowledge. Trained practitioners called Babalawos interpret sacred patterns cast by divination tools to reveal messages from the spiritual realm. This is a careful process, guided by thousands of verses memorized and interpreted in context, never rushed, never taken lightly. In other traditions, dreams are understood to be more than personal imagination. They are spiritual messages. Elders often help interpret the symbolism of dreams, believing that ancestors, divine forces, or even the Creator may speak through them. The night becomes a sacred window through which spiritual truth is glimpsed and dreams are recorded, discussed and honored within the community. There are also rituals and ceremonies designed to open communication with the unseen. These may involve drumming, singing, movement, and the invocation of names or symbols. Sacred items such as staffs, beads, or relics serve as conduits of energy and memory, often passed down through generations. These are not objects of worship but points of focus, physical reminders of spiritual presence. Shrines and sacred spaces are also central to this communication. These places are not visited casually. They are treated with care, often located in natural settings like forests, riversides, or groves believed to be imbued with spiritual resonance. Offerings are made not to bribe, but to express gratitude, humility, and respect, maintaining the relationship between the seen and unseen. Through these pathways, African communities affirm a truth that transcends time. The spiritual world is not silent. It listens, it responds, and it teaches, but only to those willing to approach it with sincerity, humility, and honor. In this sacred dialogue, people find not only guidance but identity. They are reminded that they are part of something larger, deeper, and more enduring than the physical world alone can reveal. In African traditional spirituality, justice is not just a social system, it is a spiritual responsibility. Communities are not governed by law alone, but by harmony, accountability, and moral alignment with the natural and spiritual world. Within this framework, ancestral spirits and divinely guided figures play an essential role in maintaining spiritual order, ensuring that human actions reflect truth, balance, and integrity. Ancestral spirits are often seen as guardians of family values and ethical conduct. Their role goes beyond remembrance. They help guide decisions, protect the lineage, and remind the living of their responsibilities. When one lives with respect, generosity, and humility, it is believed that the ancestors draw near in support and favor. When values such as deceit, betrayal, or pride begin to take root, their guidance may be withdrawn, serving as a quiet but powerful correction. In this way, ancestral presence becomes a moral compass. Elders often say that the ancestors see what the eyes cannot, meaning that even when human laws fall short, spiritual justice continues to operate. This belief encourages ethical living not out of fear, but out of a desire to honor the wisdom and legacy of those who came before, and to keep the community spiritually aligned. Living leaders who are considered spiritually appointed, such as chiefs or priests, kings, also carry the responsibility of upholding sacred order. Their authority is not merely political matter. It is spiritual. They are expected to protect their people, settle disputes with fairness, and serve as stewards of peace and prosperity. If imbalance arises, whether through conflict, injustice, or wrongdoing, these leaders may call upon rituals of reconciliation to restore unity between individuals, families, or even between the people and the land. Across many communities, traditional mechanisms of justice include truth-telling rituals, public reconciliations, and spiritual cleansing. These practices are meant to heal, not harm, to restore relationships, not to punish. In times of illness, misfortune, or unrest, the question often asked is not just what happened, but what must be made right. This vision of justice is deeply relational. It does not separate right and wrong from the spiritual world. Instead, it sees every action, every word spoken, every promise kept or broken as part of a greater spiritual ecosystem. Protection is granted not merely as a reward, but as a natural result of living in truth, honoring the sacred, and caring for others. In a world where consequences extend beyond the visible, the unseen guardians, both ancestral and living, serve not only to protect but to remind the living of who they are and what they are called to uphold. In this African spirituality offers a powerful vision of justice as something not imposed from above, but lived from within. Anakanli Dufamathin. Those centuries have passed and modern life has transformed the way many people live. The spiritual foundations laid by Africa's ancestors have not disappeared. They have quietly endured, adapting to new forms, languages and rhythms, while continuing to shape the spiritual landscape of millions. In cities and villages alike, traces of ancestral reverence can still be felt, sometimes in small, everyday gestures. A quiet prayer offered before speaking, a respectful pause before entering a family compound, or the naming of a child after a revered elder are all subtle signs of a worldview that honors those who came before. These are not empty customs, but guests are not empty customs. They are living rituals, expressions of an ongoing relationship with the unseen world. In places where new religions took root, many African communities have found ways to weave their heritage into their faith. In Christian churches, for instance, it is not uncommon to see practices that reflect traditional values, vibrant music, collective worship, the honoring of elders, and deep respect for community life. The heartfelt expression of spirituality through movement, song, and testimony often reflects the same spiritual intensity that has long been central to African worship. Festivals and family gatherings also carry the echoes of ancestral traditions. In naming ceremonies, weddings, and moments of remembrance, the presence of the ancestors is often acknowledged with words of blessing and gratitude. Stories passed down through generations are shared not only for entertainment but as sacred memory, keeping alive the values, humor, struggles, and triumphs of those who walked before. Even among younger generations and in the diaspora, there is a growing desire to reconnect with these spiritual roots. Some seek to understand the beliefs and practices of their ancestors, not to return to the past, but to carry forward what was wise, grounding, and sacred. This rediscovery often brings a sense of identity, dignity, and belonging, a reminder that spirituality is not only about looking upward, but also about looking backward with reverence and inward with understanding. Africa's spiritual heartbeat continues to echo in quiet but powerful ways. It lives in how people pray, how they gather, how they forgive, and how they dream. It whispers in the language of tradition, not to bind the future, but to anchor it in meaning. The modern world moves quickly, but the ancient world has not been left behind. It walks quietly beside us, in memory and practice, and in spirit, reminding us that what is sacred never truly fades. The journey into Africa's hidden spiritual world is not a journey into the past. It is a journey into a reality that still breathes, a reality where the veil between the visible and invisible is thin, and where every heartbeat echoes with the footsteps of those who came before. Ancestral spirits and the sacred presence carried by living guides are not relics of ancient times. They are reminders that the divine has always been near, in the soil, in the story, in the soul. Throughout this exploration, we've seen that ancestral reverence is not a form of nostalgia. It is a sacred responsibility, a way of honoring those whose lives laid the foundation for our own. We've witnessed how living figures, seen as carriers of spiritual wisdom and moral guidance, serve as bridges between heaven and earth. We've explored how the unseen world communicates, protects, corrects, and inspires. These teachings are not about superstition or spectacle. They are about relationship with community, with the divine, and with the unseen continuity that ties every generation together. In African spirituality, life is not separate from the sacred. Every step taken, every word spoken, every act of justice, compassion, or remembrance is a spiritual act. The bridge between worlds is not built with bricks, but with memory, humility, and faith. In a time when many seek clarity, connection, and a deeper sense of self, the wisdom of these traditions still offers guidance. They remind us that we are not alone, that we are part of something vast, eternal, and lovingly watchful. That to know who we are is to remember who we came from, and to live with the awareness that the sacred is not far away, Thank you for walking this path of discovery. If this journey moved something within you, consider sharing your reflections, subscribing for more, and continuing the conversation. Because the bridge between worlds is strongest when we walk across it together, honoring the past, living with purpose, and walking forward in light.